when I read this, I found it a bit troubling just from what I understand of stereotypical thinking, whether what I think is right or not. So we're going to explore this. Now, this is an article by an organization called Harley Therapy, and the clue is in the name Harley. This is an organization that has one of its bases on Harley Street in London, where it's a renowned street for the world's experts in various, if not all, kinds of healthcare, and thus mental health care when it comes down to stereotypes, which this article is about. So this one would automatically assume is going to be 100% factual. It's going to be the best information and all the rest of it. That's the stereotypical thinking in my mind anyway, because it's automatically assumed that at locations like Harley Street or other streets around there where you have, I don't know, you have the best designers on Sloane Street, you have Knightsbridge where you can go shopping and get the best of anything and everything. And Harley Street is thought of to be the best of the best in healthcare. So you would assume, well, I've assumed that this information would be the ultimate. However, when I had a quick flick through it, I thought otherwise. Now, it would help if the panelists were here so that they could help use their apply their critical thinking skills to this information, for us to break it down, as opposed to be potentially being biased and my critical thinking getting in the way of me. But I mean, it'll be a good exercise for me just to read this through with you guys, and try not to be so stereotypical thinking myself. So anyway, we'll get on with this. Harley Therapy mental health blog. I'm going to be putting the link to this information in the description of the video, so don't worry about that. Anything and everything that I come across and that I talk about and look at in these live streams, I always put them in the description box of the videos of the live streams, so don't worry about that. The information will be available for you to go and have a look at it yourself. So this article is titled Stereotypes, Why We Make Them and How to Stop. So this was last reviewed by Dr. Sherry Jacobson, who is one of the big wigs behind this organization, Harley Therapy. So I have assumed that she's up on her game in healthcare, and in particular in mental health care, because there are therapy as in a token therapies organization. As I looked more into it, but you can go to the website and go to their About Us and all of that and scour it and do your internet sleuthing over who they are and everything yourselves. So yeah, it's by Andrea M. Darcy, and it says, it's easy to assume that stereotypes are over there, something that ignorant or bad people are doing, not us. But if we look at it from a psychological angle, the truth is not that simple. What is a stereotype? When we stereotype, we paint an entire group of people with the same brush, and it's a brush coated with assumptions, things we decide are facts based on limited information. Stereotypes are not always a bad thing, and yes, we all make them. A way to process and categorize information, they are part of our brain's design to help us understand a complicated world that goes quickly. And sometimes stereotypes are useful or even correct. A flying insect might bite, for example, or a person holding a weapon is best avoided. Now, I've made this point myself, so I can agree with that I am open to being corrected though, but I can agree with that thus far. And in inverted commas, it says, but when it comes to people, stereotypes often lead to first prejudice and then discrimination. Stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination. Sometimes the terms stereotype, prejudice, and discrimination are used interchangeably, but they are distinct, standalone processes, although they often work in a three-step process. The stereotype is the thinking step or cognitive bias. We mentally categorize others based on very little evidence, then we feel an emotion. Prejudice is the emotional step or emotional bias. We feel angry or threatened by our own assumption or proud and outraged, and we decide we have to do something about it. So we develop negative preconceptions based on racial, ethnic, gender, or social affiliations, which leads to the action step of discrimination or behavioral bias. We treat others differently based on our prejudice. The different types of stereotypes, but I didn't stereotype at the time, I just didn't know any better. Psychologists would say you did stereotype, but are guilty of what is known as implicit stereotyping. Implicit stereotypes are unconscious ones. They can be harder to spot, particularly if they are something that everyone around us thinks, or we grew up being taught. Women are made to be mothers is something that has only recently been questioned, but still runs deeply through society. If we dare explore, we might find that deep down we still hold this as true. Explicit stereotypes are ones we know we are making. Not that it means we stop being biased. We often underestimate just how biased we really are. So we might, for example, say, I know it's biased, but I think most men are lazy given half a chance. The bias might run further. We might also feel most men are dangerous and predators. Why do we stereotype? Again, our brain is designed to organize information, and it is also driven by social motivation, determining whether to bond or compete with others pending what it thinks will make life easier. This arises from our caveman days when we needed groups to survive. In this way, stereotypes are connected to the survival mechanisms of our brain. But our brains also engage in self-regulatory processes. We develop personal beliefs and we follow social norms to act in a positive, intentional manner and control our thinking. So our brains are not designed to be prejudiced or racist. Our brains are rather taught to be so. As an in-depth paper called The Neuroscience of Prejudice and Stereotyping points out, it's a learned threat response to racial outgroups, which is ostensibly rooted in fear conditioning. Now, that raises red flags to me because it's talking as if racial discrimination and racial stereotyping is the only possible thing that anyone could stereotype. It's just not true. Absolutely not true. But anyway, I'll continue. In a study of white Americans viewing images of Black Americans' faces, it was found that the amygdala, the part of the brain connected to our fear response, had a greater activation when looking at darker rather than lighter skin tone. And this was when judgments of faces are made on the basis of superficial information. Now, hang on a minute. Superficial information. Let's have a look at what that means because, I don't know, there's something terribly bad agenda and misinformation about that in my mind. So I'm just going to bring up superficial. The definition, we're going to have a look at that. Dictionary. Oh! Someone's just cropped in backstage. All right, while that page is loading up, I shall bring on stage Ravioli.
Oh, hi.
Oh,
Hi, Lieutenant.
yeah.
How are you? All right. Can you hear me? Sorry, I'm not too quiet, am I? Oh.
You're not too quiet, but because I might need to bring my mic down a bit, actually. I'm glad you said that. Let me have a look. And I'll bring yours up. And you don't have to raise your voice. Because I know,
Okay.
you like be considerate of where you live.
Yep.
But we still need to hear you. So I've got your voice on max. That sounds a bit better, actually. And I've brought him down. I'm
Lieutenant,
sure.
I am considerate where I live. You're right. I am very
Yes. Yes,
You're
you are. I
clever.
know you are.
You're clever,
So,
Lieutenant.
yes, you know me. How are you anyway, before we go on to looking at
I'm
the
alright.
definition of superficial? You're okay?
It's strange. It's just when we last, the world looks a bit different from when we last spoke a week ago, Lieutenant. You just don't know what you might hear and what's going on in the world. But yeah, things are happening. Things are in motion right now.
Yeah. So I'm just welcoming. Oh, I can't spell welcome. Welcoming Chris. But yeah, this is a closed, invited only panel, Chris. And it's just because I don't want too many views to try to cover in the limited amount of time that we do this for. Okay, so we'll get back to this. So yes, a lot of things are happening in the world, but yeah, did you hear me announce that the topic is stereotypical thinking? So we're going back to that.
Okay. Right. Okay. Yep.
All right. Now, I know that we won't go into anything that you might have because I've already started on something. So we'll get through this article before our break. But have you looked into what it was that you said you were going to look into on this matter?
A little bit. That was, I mean, a while ago. In the last few days, I haven't. Yeah, I haven't. I won't pretend and say in the last few days I knew more about a week ago, 10 days ago. But yeah, I had done some kind of. I had some web page found, but no, I haven't. Yeah, I don't feel I can add too much on what you're presenting now, if that makes sense. But
yeah, that's
I'll try.
okay.
Sorry, Lieutenant. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I've got plenty for us to work through for the entire live stream. If you, Nagar, or if Fancy turns up, if you don't have anything, that's absolutely fine.
Lieutenant, I think Nagar, is she in the back? Is Nagar in the back? Maybe. I don't know.
She's not here yet, I don't think. Nope.
Oh, she said she was in the backstage.
Nope.
Oh, okay.
She's not. I'll hear her when she comes. Don't worry about it. So we'll go back to where I was. I'm going to hold this up. So we were looking at the definition of superficial, just to make sure we're absolutely clear. There's a number of definitions. Let me get to in British English, which is where we are, okay, superficial, of relating to or being near or forming the surface, superficial bruising. So, okay. The second one is displaying a lack of thoroughness or care, a superficial inspection. The third one is only outwardly apparent rather than genuine or actual. The similarity was mainly superficial. The fourth definition is of little substance or significance, trivial, superficial differences. Number 5 is lacking originality or profundity. The film's plot was quite superficial. And the sixth definition is of measurements involving only the surface area. So the text we were looking at had said superficial, right, when judgments of faces are made on the basis of superficial information. So I would say, let me have a look at the definition that we're looking for here is of relating to being near or forming the surface. So it's like surface level information. It's not, there's not much depth to it.
Right,
because I
yeah.
wouldn't say it's displaying a lack of thoroughness or care, because the information that the brain has and uses to present you with a decision, because it's formed a stereotype, isn't necessarily through a lack of thoroughness or care. It's just that that's all the information it's got. So I think that rules out the second definition. I think I've just heard Nagar arrive. Hang on a sec. So I think we're going with the first definition, right? So it just basically means that the superficial information bears little depth, that's all. But it's not through lack of care or anything of the kind. No. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you.
You can.
Yep.
You can. Great. Now I'm going to bring Nagar on the stage.
Oh,
hello,
okay.
Nagar. Welcome.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. I've just upped your volume on your phone, on your mic, I should say. Sorry.
Okay.
So how are you?
That's fine. Very well, thank you.
It's good to hear you. Good to have you back.
Lovely. Thank you.
You're getting a hi, Nagar, from Tina in the live chat as well.
Oh, that's sweet.
Nice.
Thank you. Thank you, Tina.
Yeah. So I don't know how much you've been listening, how much you've heard there, Nagar, but I did announce that tonight's discussion is a return to stereotypical thinking.
Yes. I gather. I've been listening.
Okay, that's great. That's great. So did you, just out of interest, accumulate any information on?
Well, I looked up into stereotypical behavior in animals, as I said I would do that. And when time comes, I will bring it up. I'll talk about it.
Okay, that's great. Just asking out of curiosity whether you dug up any information or not. So we might not get to look at it this time around, but the next time around, hopefully we will. I'll just continue where I was. We'll take a break at about 9:10. I'll get through this article quickly, and then we'll come back and we'll go on to something else, because I do have something else for us to at least get started on after we've had a quick break. So we've just looked at the definition of superficial so that we could find out precisely what this means. I'll go over this paragraph again. It says, in a study of white Americans viewing images of Black Americans' faces, it was found that the amygdala, the part of the brain connected to our fear response, had a greater activation when looking at darker rather than lighter skin tone. And this was when judgments of faces are made on the basis of superficial information. So that means as if the information that those brains had wasn't enough for them to be able to hold an accurate view of the matter at hand. But I looked that up because I beg to differ, due to what we know about the crime rates in America and who typically the perpetrators are. And thus, because that gets reported, which the mainstream media is supposed to report, people will, the brain will take that information in and store that and add it up. And every time data like that comes up, it's, you know, it's going to, like a computer, it's going to have an accurate picture just based on the information that it receives about the crime rates, you know, just like the computer would, just like, you know, a calculator would. So your brain's doing that, whether you're consciously aware of it or not. And so when it comes to viewing images of Black Americans' faces, regardless of your own skin color, right? But they've done a study of white Americans here, regardless of what anyone's skin color would be, because of the information that it's got, it would be right that the brain would be saying there's a risk there because of the crime rates of Black Americans versus white Americans and the types of crimes that they're typically involved in. And that, that's not being stereotypical. That's not being prejudice, and that's not holding any, discriminating against anyone. That's just simple facts as far as the data shows anyway, right? I mean, I dare say that not all crimes are reported and there will be nuances and all the rest of it. But if that's all the data that your brain's got, then it's only right that that's what it's doing.
But it says here, it's the darker the skin, the more the amygdala gets excited or responds with fear. I mean, that is not what is statistics, really. I mean, the darker skin Black people don't commit more crimes.
Yes, they do.
The darker skin Black people in America commit more crimes. Is that a fact?
Yes. The data's out on that. Yeah, that's always been the case. They make up a tiny percentage of the population, but there's a greater percentage of Black Americans that are criminals than there is the percentage of white Americans that are criminals.
No, I'm making a slightly different point, Lieutenant. I mean, there are many different shades of Black African-looking Americans. You get light brown and then you go shades until you get to the very darkest color. And this is what is saying, the darker the skin color, the more fear is.
No, it didn't say that. It didn't say that. It says, it was found that the amygdala, the part of the brain connected to our fear response, had a greater activation when looking at darker rather than lighter skin tone. It didn't say that the darker the skin tone goes, the more it is activated. It's not looking at the different shades of high and melanin skin color. It's just saying that when looking at darker rather than lighter skin tone, there was greater activation.
Okay. I am a little bit confused here because they were white Americans, so presumably, I mean, even white people have many different shades of brown within their skin tone, but they were obviously Caucasian or white, as what we call white-skinned people. But they were looking at Black Americans who we assume they're not Indian American, from
Correct.
India.
Yes.
But African American
descent.
Yeah, of African descent. It was found that the amygdala, the part of the brain connected to our fear response, had a greater activation when looking at darker rather than lighter skin tones.
Skin tone, yes.
I don't take the lighter skin tones to mean white people. I take it to be the African Americans with lighter skin tones. Am I reading it wrong?
I think you are, yeah.
I see. Okay.
But who knows? Anyway, then it says, are some of us more likely to stereotype than others? Social dominance orientation, or SDO for short, is a personality trait that is sometimes used to explain racism and sexism. The idea here is that some of us are born with brains more designed to prefer hierarchies within social systems and more likely to divide people by status. People with SDO tend to be dominant and driven, believe in hard work, and seek power. While it's convenient to blame things like racism and corrupt policing on SDO, other researchers have pointed out that it's not correct. SDO is actually more about believing there are limited resources. When a study gave students information about a made-up group of immigrants, it showed that the students were more likely to be prejudiced if they were told the immigrants were socially competitive. When the immigrants were described not as a threat, but as morally deviant, even though this was a worse attribute to have, the students were less likely to be biased against the fictional immigrants. Now, hang on a minute. When looking at that, I think it might be down to the use of the word threat versus morally deviant. The word threat is in your brain as red flag, alarm bells, right? But morally deviant is something that you've got to think about more. So you're not going to get that excited because you're going to think about it. So your prejudice isn't going to go up that much compared to the word threat, right? Because I find that when you're in an emotional mind, which the word threat will put you into, or morally deviant, you're likely to make the mistake of being prejudiced and discriminatory towards someone. So the more, what's the word? The more in the driving seat the emotion is, which threat would put your emotional mind into, compared to morally deviant, the bigger the mistake you're going to make. So the more likely you are to become prejudiced than with the use of the words morally deviant. So that might be why that's happened.
It's this business about what it says here. The idea is some of us are born with brains more designed to prefer hierarchies within social system. Is that a understood fact?
Well,
I mean, is
no,
that a real
because
fact?
because it just says the idea here. And I'm glad you pointed that out, because when I did read this through, I thought, okay, it's an idea. This is where someone might have an idea, and thus they are an ideologue. And they're putting this in a school of thought, which psychology is, to be tested at the very least. Yeah. So we need to hold on to the fact that this is an idea, not a fact. Okay? Because I think throughout nature, throughout the world, we have hierarchies. You look at ants, you look at all of the species, and you look at the plants and all the rest of it. Throughout nature, throughout life itself, there are hierarchies. So I don't think it's that one's brain is more designed to be like that than someone else's. But I might be wrong. Who knows? This is thus far an idea, though. Yes, Ravioli.
I just think, the idea here is that some of us are born with brains more designed for a hierarchy than a social system. But I mean, I kind of like just thinking like kind of religiously, that makes sense.
Religiously, what do you mean?
Oh God, the hierarchy at the top of it all. And I think that hierarchies.
Well, that again. I mean, you're bringing something in when we're trying to work out stereotypical thinking. Let's not muddy the waters.
No, I'm not muddying them. No.
With people's beliefs, with people's belief systems and stuff like that as well. It's not
okay.
Yeah, we're applying our critical thinking skills.
What does SDO stands for? I lost it somehow.
Oh, social dominance orientation.
Ah, okay.
Or SDO for short.
So some people are more prone to it than others.
That's the idea.
Okay.
So I'll read it again. Social dominance orientation, or SDO for short, is a personality trait that is sometimes used to explain racism and sexism. The idea here is that some of us are born with brains more designed to prefer hierarchies within social systems and more likely to divide people by status. So that's assuming that when one acknowledges that there are hierarchies, that one is more likely to divide people by status. Now, this is where I'm seeing cultural Marxism here, as opposed to a critical thinking paper of a highly esteemed Psychology and Mental Health Institute. You see, so this is why I'm showing this particular article, because it's from Harley Street. Okay, so this is supposed to be the world's greatest in their field. And I'm saying that they've got cultural Marxism. They've not got much fact going on here, because they're resorting to an idea.
I see.
But anyway, I'll continue. The idea here is that some of us are born with brains more designed to prefer hierarchies within social systems and more likely to divide people by status. People with SDO tend to be dominant and driven, believe in hard work, and seek power. While it's convenient to blame things like racism and corrupt policing on SDO, other researchers have pointed out that it's not correct. SDO is actually more about believing there are limited resources. So this idea is being questioned. That's a good thing. When a study gave students information about a made-up group of immigrants, it showed that the students were more likely to be prejudiced if they were told the immigrants were socially competitive. When the immigrants were described not as a threat, but as morally deviant, even though this was a worse attribute to have, the students were less likely to be biased against the fictional immigrants. So how to stop stereotyping others? So what can we learn from the above information and research when it comes to facing our own tendencies to stereotype? 1. Question your fear response. If you feel fear around someone you don't know, take note. Is it a learned fear? What assumptions are you making because of that fear? Are these assumptions useful, or are they learned bias? Where might you have learned this response? 2. Make it personal. Remember, stereotyping paints a group of people as all the same. Break this thinking habit by noticing when you speak about people in generalities and, where possible, focusing on the individual. It's not the black guy who works at the shop on the corner. It's Michael, the shop owner, who is a father and likes cricket. So you see, is it just me, or is that cultural Marxism? It's telling someone how to think, what to think, and how to speak, as opposed to developing themselves naturally. It's like programming, isn't it?
Yeah,
anyway, number 3. So number 3, learn mindfulness. To change how we think, we need to know how we think. Mindfulness is an easy to learn tool that teaches you to be aware of your thoughts and feelings, and you can learn it now with our free guide to mindfulness. Notice if your thoughts presuppose that the person you are developing bias against is in competition with you, aka you are engaging in SDO. Do you feel that your social or economic resources are threatened? Is this even true? Are resources as limited as you are telling yourself they are? And even if they were, it is a valid reason to make a negative assumption about the other person. 4, volunteer. If you suspect you might be high on the social dominance scale, then this is particularly important. Research shows that those high on SDO are lower than average with empathy and community orientation levels. Volunteering helps. In a 2017 survey of over 1,500 students at the London School of Economics, 74.5% of students who had engaged in volunteering reported a greater understanding of others. Now, I'm not sure that that actually means anything, because that happens in all age groups. When people volunteer, they report a greater understanding of others because they engage, well, I mean, there's empathy in everything, but they typically are in a position where they have to choose, and therefore they are compelled to choose compassion over anything else, right? So I'm not sure this is anything to do with, I don't think that like proves this SDO thing. So anyway, that's just my thoughts on that. What would you say to that? Sorry, Nika.
I agree with you. I mean, I think this is very superficial somehow.
Yes, this information.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So 5, work on your self-compassion. How could focusing on yourself help you stop stereotyping others? Compassion-focused therapy believes we can more easily have compassion and understanding for others if we actually have self-compassion for ourselves first. Feel caught up in constant rage and negative thinking towards others and wanted to stop? We connect you with top London talk therapists who can help, or use our online platform to find a UK-wide registered therapist or online counsellor now.
I think it's advertising themselves.
Isn't it? Isn't it? Now this, this is supposed to be something that people with mental health problems would come across and they would read, and they're supposed to take some facts from it. But I think there's very, very little in there. It's all suggests, it's an idea, it's research says, but there isn't much depth to it, like you were saying there, Nagar. You said that you find it's somewhat
superficial.
Yeah.
Smooth moderator,